It's Wednesday, the 7th of August, 2024. Welcome to the Fast 5 Business News by Fear and Greed, where we give you the top 5 business stories you need to know in just 5 minutes. I'm Michael Thompson, and good morning, Sean Aylmer.
Good morning, Michael.
Sean, 5 big stories to get through today in 5 minutes, so we better get cracking. Story number 1, the Reserve Bank has dashed hopes for a rate cut anytime soon, worried that inflation is falling slower than it previously thought.
The central bank yesterday left the benchmark cash rate at 4.35%, the level it's been for 9 months, saying inflation is still some way above the midpoint of its 2 to 3% target range. Governor Michelle Bullock said only 2 options were considered at the bank's board meeting: raise rates or hold for a while. She said a near-term reduction in the cash rate doesn't align with the board's current thinking, pouring cold water on hopes rates would fall before the end of this year. The bank's pushed out to the middle of 2026 when it thinks inflation will return to around 2.5%. That's because the economy is growing a bit faster than the Reserve Bank expected, and there isn't enough capacity to meet that high demand. But there's still plenty of uncertainty in all this. The bank says there are still upside risks to inflation, especially services inflation. Also, wages growth has peaked, but it's still too high. On the other hand, momentum in economic activity has been weak. There's also uncertainty around how long monetary policy takes to work and what's going on overseas. At the end of the day, though, the Reserve Bank said it's mostly worried about returning inflation to target. That's its priority.
What was the response to the announcement, Sean, and also to Governor Michelle Bullock's press conference afterwards?
Well, there wasn't a lot from equities. We expected rates to be on hold. There wasn't a lot from the dollar, though it did jump a bit. It's trading around 65 US cents. When asked about the turmoil in financial markets in recent days, the governor basically said it didn't play a role in the board's deliberations. She also said it's important to resist peer pressure, reflecting that many other economies have started lowering rates. In fact, the Reserve Bank is now looking decidedly hawkish compared to its central bank brethren, Bank of England, European Central Bank, Bank of Canada. They've all cut rates. US is likely to do so soon.
All right, moving on to story number 2 now. After the big sell-off on Friday last week and then on Monday as well this week, how did the ASX 200 perform yesterday?
Well, given there was a sell-off on Wall Street on Monday night as well, yesterday's performance was pretty encouraging. The S&P ASX 200 closed up nearly 0.5% to 7,681 points. And that's after the previous 2 sessions combined sent the bourse down 5.5%. Generally, it was interest rate sensitive stocks that did best yesterday. Always worth looking at the banks. Well, the Commonwealth Bank jumped 2.4% yesterday. Westpac and NAB were up around 1%. ANZ dropped slightly. All the banks are still some way below their recent peaks. Now, those recent peaks were only a week ago. The big 4 banks represent 4 of the 6 largest companies on the bourse. Keep that in mind. NAB's off 9% over the last week. Commonwealth Bank 8%. Westpac and ANZ 7%. A lot of value lost in the market there.
Yeah, indeed. Story number 3, universities are warning that 14,000 jobs could go as the government pushes ahead with its plan to cap international student numbers, a policy that institutions say will have a catastrophic effect on the sector.
Universities Australia Chief Executive Luke Sheehy told a parliamentary inquiry the government was using students as cannon fodder and unfairly blaming them for the housing crisis. He said proposed legislation to cap international student numbers was poll-driven and a political smokescreen as the Labor government tries to gain an upper hand in the migration battle ahead of the next election. She said that even without the proposed student caps, the government had already taken a sledgehammer to the international education sector, with visa grant rates down 23%, or almost 60,000 students over the past year. He said that represents $4.3 billion, or a $4.3 billion hit to the economy at least, and could cost the university sector alone over 14,000 jobs, Michael.
Story number 4, Sean, thousands of Australian travellers will be granted express entry into the United States from late next year after Australia was given access to the US Global Entry Program.
In the first phase of the deal, about 1,000 Australians who have travelled to the US 5 or more times in the past 12 months will be granted expedited entry into America. A second phase, which requires laws to be passed in Parliament here, will allow an unlimited number of Australians quick entry, according to a report in the Fin Review. Australia joins a list of other nations, including the UK and Singapore, that are taking part in the program, in which time-sensitive transit information is shared quickly with the US. Australia's participation in the Global Entry Program was announced in 2018, hit barriers during COVID. Finally, it's off the ground.
All right, last one. Story number 5. This is a big one too, Sean. A judge has ruled that Google's ubiquitous search engine has been illegally exploiting its dominance to squash competition and stifle innovation in a major decision that has the potential to shake up the internet and really hobble one of the world's best-known companies.
The highly anticipated decision issued by the US District Court comes nearly a year after the start of a trial that pitted the US Justice Department against Google. After reviewing reams of evidence that included testimony from top executives at Google, Microsoft, and Apple, the judge, Emmett Mehta, concluded that Google is a monopolist and has acted as one to maintain its monopoly. He said Google's dominance in the search market is evidence of its monopoly. According to a report on AP, Google enjoys an 89% share of the market for general search services. It's 95% on mobiles, according to the ruling. It represents a major setback for Google and its parent Alphabet, which argued its popularity stemmed from consumers' overwhelming desire to use a search engine so good at what it does that it has become synonymous with looking things up online. But 8.5 billion queries go through per day. Google intends to appeal the findings.
That is staggering. All right, there we go. The top 5 business stories in 5 minutes. Thank you, Sean.
Thank you, Michael.
It is Wednesday, the 7th of August, 2024. Remember to hit follow on the podcast. And if 5 minutes isn't enough, you can find our longer daily show called Fear and Greed wherever you listen to podcasts, or at fearandgreed.com.au, which is also where you sign up for our free weekly newsletter, which comes out later this morning. So jump onto that one straight away. I'm Michael Thompson, and that was the Fast 5 Business News by Fear and Greed. Have a great day.